To my right, we have Wade Fetzer, who has been a graduate of the University of Wisconsin for a long time. It also means he's been able to have a very long and successful career. In addition to that, he's been a tremendous supporter of the university and the School of Human Ecology. Most of you probably walked past the Fetzer Center for Excellence downstairs on your way into the building. We also have Matt Jokey. He's the one who came up with this idea. So if it works, he gets the credit. If it fails, I'm in trouble.
You won't see me again.
Yeah. Matt works for Principal Mutual Funds, among other things, but has been a very active supporter of our school and of our program, and we're very pleased that he came up with this idea and helped recruit some of the people you see up here. We also have Alan Myers here, and he is with Credit Suisse. He has had a career of working with a variety of different parts of the industry, working with individuals and families and helping with their financial success as well. You will notice that he's from the business school, but that's okay. Vanita Paul. Let's go to the punchline. We have a math major up here. And according to registrations, there's 2 of you out there in the audience. You know who you are. More importantly, we're very pleased that she could join us. She comes to us from Heartland Mutual Funds, where she plays a very important role in helping promote the company's compliance and ethical activities for the firm and all the others that they work with. Scott Wick joins us. There was something about a ring here that I didn't quite understand earlier. It had something to do with sports.
Long story.
He's our representative of the social sciences, BA in Comm Arts, but also has played a significant role in helping Hub International promote their products and services in a variety of different spheres. So we're very pleased to have him as well. So I'm going to quit talking except for asking questions. What we're going to start with is a basic, what do you do? We've got your bios, lots of words, lots of titles and firms and all that, but give the students some idea, just very quickly, what is it you do, kind of what's your part of the industry, what happens in a day? Go straight across
So I work at Credit Suisse in the private banking area. We work with a variety of individuals and institutions, a lot of family offices, and mainly we work on both sides of a family's balance sheet. We do a lot of lending as well as investing for the families. A typical day is really carved up into different spheres in terms of working with clients as well as internal functions and working internally with different product groups in a short
Very good.
scheme.
I am the financial equivalent of a kindergarten teacher. On a daily basis, Heartland Funds, Heartland Mutual Funds and Advisors, we're a $6 billion company based in Milwaukee. We're purely an investment advisor, which means we manage money for people, whether that's people coming to us through Credit Suisse or people investing in our mutual funds, which could be in your retirement space. But we manage money for people. My job as a kindergarten teacher is to answer questions, make sure we're following the rules, the requirements that we need to in the industry, making sure people are asking me questions. I want to be there so I can help them figure out what they need to do on a daily basis. So it's a combination of being involved in their daily questions as well as making sure from a bigger perspective we're meeting the ethical requirements of the industry.
I work for Principal Mutual Funds, which is part of Principal Insurance Company. You might have seen our cartoons on the, for some reason we can't get off the cartoons. We're big into those, you'll see them around. And actually proudly a Big Ten sponsor, so happy to do that. I work on the asset management side, and so I'm in sales and I represent the mutual funds to advisors, and then they in turn may use part of our asset management story for their clients. So as an example, to put it in layman's terms, Alan would be my client, whereas your parents might be Alan's client. And so you typically won't run into me because I'm calling on, my day in our life, or my life is meeting with 4 or 5 Allens in my area and talking to them about our asset management story. So I don't run the money, I sell the money, if you will, and try to do a position in a portfolio, earn the opportunity to do business with him, and then ultimately with his clients, where it makes sense.
I work for Hub International. We're a large insurance broker, headquartered in Chicago, and really I'll act as the intermediary between someone buying insurance and the insurance companies. And so we work both from the private client side as well as the commercial side, both on the employee benefits, the property casualty, the surety and bonding aspect. And so we kind of run the gamut between the individuals all the way up to the Fortune 500 companies.
I have to remember back, what was a typical day like? But today, it's interesting, the common connection that I have with the panelists. I've met them all through working for the University of Wisconsin. And I feel blessed in that regard, but I also, if somebody asks me, what's your typical thought process and what are you doing on a daily basis, very honestly, an awful lot of my thinking and time is spent in Madison, or thinking about Madison, and how can we do things and keep things going the way they are. But dialing back, I was on the investment banking side of Goldman in the Chicago office, and giving it some context, when I joined Goldman in 1971, since I couldn't be general manager of the Bears or the Cubs, I finally woke up, and my parents finally got me to think straight that I'd better get a real job.
The Cubs might have an opening soon, though.
Well, the Cubs should have hired me. Anyway, so I went to work for Goldman Sachs in 1971, and the total firm had 500 employees. You know, today we have, I guess, 1,500 in the Tokyo office, or 32,000 in total. So remembering in that context, in those days, and I think it's a good lesson for everybody, in our business you would call, in those days, you'd have a bulge bracket firm. Those were the super majors. Most of the names are gone. Dillon Reed, Kuhn Loeb, Harriman Ripley, et cetera, et cetera. Goldman was not a bulge bracket firm in those days. Goldman was barely in the next category of majors. And I think it was in the 50s, mid to late 50s, the one thing that Goldman had is they had a senior partner by the name of Sidney Weinberg who had a relationship with the Ford family. So Goldman managed Ford's IPO, and that was a big deal, and they were the lead manager. And we used to have that tombstone ad of that offering, and we look at, well, who's still around today? And just about everybody's gone, including my microphone. But I worked with clients. I worked with corporate clients throughout the Midwest.
Very good. So now it's time for a question from the audience. How many of you have a fairly clear idea as to what you want to do after you graduate? Show of hands. Okay, now let's find out if you're alone. How many of you had a clear idea what you wanted to do? And if so, how did you come upon that? Anita?
I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but to end up in the financial industry, I didn't know. As a matter of fact, when I was in law school and I was an intern at a law firm, I avoided every case, every project that involved the Securities and Exchange Commission. So you fall upon things based on need a lot of times. And when I graduated from law school in 2004, that was right after a number of different scandals in the mutual fund industry and a number of new regulations that came out, one of which was creating my position, the financial kindergartner, or the CCO. And so at that time, it just made perfect sense because there was a need in the industry and in this area of law to join that. But if you would have asked me in high school or even in college, I'm pretty sure I didn't know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And the rest, did you have a clear idea, or did what you had in mind is completely different than what you're doing now?
I would say I wanted to be in something relationship-oriented, sales-oriented, had no idea that Wall Street was going to be the choice, the path. But I will say I did an internship going into my senior year here in Madison, and that made a big difference. Actually working in New York, working on Wall Street, and seeing what goes on a daily basis is very instrumental.
You know, Rob, I didn't come out knowing exactly what I wanted to do, but I also, like Alan, did a couple different internships, one at a bank, one at Merrill Lynch, during my time in Wisconsin. And I ended up double majoring in economics and consumer, or would be personal finance now, in that double major role. So education-wise, I was pointed in that direction. My internships pointed in that direction. But I would not have put my hand up if you were to ask me that question going out. I think I still thought I could play in the NFL, but that was clearly a dream.
Yeah.
But I think it was one of those things where, the point made earlier was, just opportunity and kind of opening your mind to different options kind of led me down this path. It certainly didn't know this role existed, if you will, back then.
I think I knew in third grade I wanted to be an insurance salesman. So, no, that's not true. I would say that, you know, I had no idea leaving school what I wanted to do. We talked about being, you know, representing the comm arts majors. I knew I wanted to tap into my network. I knew I had the ability to meet with a number of people, and I think that's the offering that the university can give you. And I think when you look at the room here and you see all the different diverse majors, that's the power of the university. And I think that's something that we need to do a better job with, being able to network amongst each other. Social networking is a wonderful thing, but it doesn't ever replace the ability to go shake hands with somebody and say, how am I going to work with somebody and how are you going to help me move along in my career? And so I had a number of people that helped me kind of position how I was going to go about doing that. And so I would say, not knowing, I would, maybe it's counterintuitive, I would hope most of you don't know exactly what you want to do, because you're going to find when you start to network with people that there may be a special niche for you at some point in time that you'll be able to carve your own path. And I think that forum here is going to be represented quite vividly.
You know, it's interesting. I said I joined Goldman in 1971, but I graduated from Wisconsin in 1959. So Wade, what'd you do for 10 years plus? And in those days, you could go right and get your MBA. So I went to Northwestern and got my MBA. But I still, and I had, there was a professor in the business school, and I could cherry pick because I didn't want to take statistics and cost accounting. So I was an econ major, but I'd go cherry pick the courses in the business school that I heard about that were exciting and really interesting, which I did. So that got me thinking about Wall Street. And I would have thought that I would have come out with my MBA and gotten a job right away. Not true. I literally walked up and down LaSalle Street in Chicago, knocking on doors to get a job. And I got a job with a firm that's no longer around, worked there for 5 years. Then I was still thinking about venture capital. I really didn't know. And I'm married, and at that point in time, we had our first child. And I still was trying to figure out, what am I going to do with myself and what excited me. And it literally took me 10 years. And I heard, again, talk about network, like Scott just mentioned and the rest of the panelists. A friend called me and said, Wade, Goldman's looking for somebody to work in the Midwest in banking. And, you know, fortunately, he introduced me, so I went to the senior partner at that point in time, and the Chicago office was all of 23 people, and luckily got hired. So that, I agree totally. I mean, pursue your passion, try and find out what really interests you, use your networks, work hard, but you know, there's so many things. I'm talking too much, but yet, last week, I'll give you an example of what's exciting about today. I went to a presentation of a small venture capital firm in Chicago, and one of the entrepreneurs got up, and he said, how many of you have driven around Chicago trying to get a parking place, knowing that you've only got 10 minutes before you're supposed to be at your meeting and you're going crazy? This young guy developed an app. And you can go on that app. I haven't done it yet. I got to find it. And you can find, I guess you show your location. They'll tell you where to park. And it's all incremental business for the parking lot, so they cut the price. And right there you can see how close to the, you know, maybe there's a condo that's got 10 spots that are unfilled. Well, they've got a $5 million business now helping people find parking spaces. And, you know, in my day and age, literally, I thought about working for the Cubs or the Bears or something like that. I wouldn't have dreamed about starting my own business, which I'm sure you're all going to have going through your own minds, which is really exciting.
I want to pick up on something Wade just said. So you had a particular person who got you introduced and told you about it, and it was kind of a turning point, something that crystallized. What about the rest of you? Was there anything in particular about kind of your early career that was like, yes, now I have that clear idea about where to go? Was it a person? Was it an event? How did you kind of start to clarify what you wanted to do?
Can we start?
Sure.
All right, I'll start. We'll go the other way.
Yeah, we're going to
Yeah, I would say, it's probably hard for me to pinpoint one person. I've been so fortunate that I've worked with some amazing people, but I do think it's very important, whatever avenue you begin to go down, whatever path that's going to be, that you do try to find a mentor, that you try to find somebody you can bounce questions off of. I do think that right now we have to continue to find a way to innovate in all of our businesses. I think the strategy for most of us in the financial space has been we'll be second to market on everything, and we'll let somebody else go do the R&D, and if it performs well, then we'll replicate what that firm's doing. So I would say find a mentor and then find somebody that's going to help you challenge. So it's hard for me to pinpoint one, but I will say that I've worked with some amazing people. And those people have all continued to kind of shape who and what I am. And I look for mentors now, whether that's in our business or outside of our business. And I think Wade, for a number of us, has been a wonderful mentor in the Chicagoland area. And I think will continue to be for Wisconsin students making that stop in the second city.
Yeah.
I think for me, I started out when I graduated from Wisconsin, I worked for a consumer goods company. Scott Paper Company, Kimberly-Clark Company, that's what it became. And I think what hit for me is not knowing what I wanted to do, getting out of school, just wanted to be trained, wanted somebody, to your point, have a mentor, have a path, get some good base knowledge underneath of how to sell, how to just learn business, if you will. And I think what the light turned on for me is the business I was in, nobody knew about. Like it was a good business. It still is a very good business, but for me, it wasn't something that anybody wanted to talk about. I mean, it wasn't relevant in your, to most people. And the way I ended up finding my way to finance was through some mentors and through some opportunities and taking some risk. But also, I found that I had a desire, and you may find this as you go through your college career and get out. I had a desire to be involved in a business that affected people. And if you think about your finances, is there anything that affects you more? I mean, feeling good or bad, and maybe not you, just think about your family, and think about school, and think about everything that you go through, and it's something that's relevant every day. And so what clicked on for me is, I guess I wanted to be working with people on something that mattered to them, that engaged us. And Scott made a point. Internet's great, LinkedIn's phenomenal, Facebook, Instagram, all this. Nothing replaces a handshake and dealing with somebody and helping people do things and set goals. And that's what led me into finance. And, so you think about Wall Street, you think about Goldman Sachs. I mean, you've got an icon on stage, and I'm not talking about Scott.
Damn it.
He is in his own mind. This is what happens when you go to Notre Dame and get your MBA. By the way, I was going to bring it up at some point, Scott. Yeah.
Hopefully that was scratched from the bio.
He's half traitor on this because he went to Notre Dame. We'll let him go. Still let him in the room. But I think there is a point. Finance, so many people think it's numbers. It's money. You hear the bad stories. Actually, it's about people. And, I can't speak to it as well as maybe Alan can because he's on the front lines. And certainly, these two gentlemen have been on the front lines for years doing it. There's nothing better than giving somebody the opportunity to do what they want, when they want, on their terms, and you help them put them in that position. That's a pretty good feeling. And that's what drove me into finance.
I think I talked before about timing and opportunity. I think there are a couple of things that a great mentor, great timing, willing to take risks, and willing to grab an opportunity. So when I started at the law firm Quarles Brady, which I was at originally, I said timing in the industry was perfect for this position. But in addition, I had a great mentor who was with me for about a year and then left to take for a position in-house, which left a very large gap between me and the senior partner who was involved in the same financial part, the mutual fund industry. And it was a great opportunity. It's a time to take confidence in yourself, and sometimes that's not easy. But believing you can do it and seizing that opportunity, that meant I was talking to clients, being the first person out there, my first year, second year out of law school, talking to mutual fund clients and asking them or figuring out how they were going to make it through their SEC process. Launching an ETF when I was 2 years and ringing the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange when I was 2 years out of law school. But that was a matter of risk-taking and being willing to tell the client, you know, I think that's a great question you have, but I'm going to have to get back to you. You can't tell them the wrong answer, but you need to be able to show the confidence that, yeah, you know this, you go figure it out and give them a call back. So it was a combination of the mentor that I had my first year out of law school. I'm still very close with him and still talk to him on a regular basis. And I think Scott talked about it too, is you need to make those connections. You need to take the risk of picking up the phone and giving a call. Social media is great, but I get hundreds of thousands of emails and LinkedIn posts, and if you pick up the phone and give me a call, I'm more likely, and I'm sure everybody else here is more likely to talk to you or send a letter. I know that's horrible to think about, but actually writing a letter and putting it in the mail, it's gonna grab the person's attention, but don't shy away from the opportunity to take that risk and make that connection. People are more willing to help you than you think they are. We've all been helped along the way, so someone's done it for us, and we want to help other people too. And then the other thing I'd say is, and you talked about this, the most satisfying things I think about our jobs are when you do hear that story about how they invested with you 25 years ago, and now they're taking their money out and buying the house that they wanted for their retirement, or sending their children to school, or buying that car, or whatever it may be. But having that impact on an individual person's life is amazing. But beyond that, finance is a place, and unfortunately, or fortunately, money is how the world turns, and that's the same way that you can get involved in nonprofit organizations. And most of the companies that we work for put giving back to the community or service high on the list of things that they want you to do and put forward. And so it's a great way to be able to give back to the community in a way that you're supported from a financial perspective in doing that.
All great points here. It's tough to back all that up. But I will say that one important distinction that I think we should note is the terms on Wall Street are buy side and sell side. And even within that, you have subcomponents. So for instance, I'm on the sell side working for a global investment bank / private bank in Credit Suisse. Wade was traditionally on the sell side, even though he was an investment banker on the sell side. Now, these two would be more on the buy side, managing money. Now, within the sell side, you actually have buy side characteristics when you manage client money. So not to confuse you, but you will hear, and it's important to be comfortable with terminology, the difference between buy side and sell side. Those are more practical terms that are thrown out there. And so I want to make that point. But in terms of a mentor, one other thing that I think you know is important to mention is that you have to add value. You have to pay it forward to an extent. And if you really want to grab somebody's attention, a lot of times, if you can make a distinct impression on them and add value to that person, then they're going to be more inclined to want to reciprocate. And that's something when you're coming through the ranks is, you know, it can't all be about what can this mentor do for the mentee. It's got to be a two-way flow like any relationship, really. And there's little things. I'm a big believer in reading some kind of publication. Nowadays, one way to think about somebody or show them that you're thinking about them is when you read the publication, you read an article that probably pertains to them, you send that to them. And all these guys know I'm pretty big on that, but it's important because life is busy and not everybody sees every article that would be relevant to that person. And you'll be surprised. You can grab some attention, and people really do appreciate that when it's a passion of theirs or it's important to them.
And the good thing is if we don't see every article, Alan will send it to us.
Yeah.
So that's good.
If you'd like his email, let us know.
Like having our own personal librarian as well.
Exactly.
You know, I'd just make one additional comment. All of you in this room, don't underestimate the relationships you're making on this campus. I was lucky to spend my whole life in the Midwest. And in that respect, the relationships and contacts and friends that I made here in Madison and then around the state and around the Midwest, those were some of my biggest successes, was where I could work with and help reward a contact or friend that I had made here in Madison, or through the Alumni Association, or through the foundation, or one of the schools after I got out of Madison. So you all are going to have an invaluable tool in your toolbox, and that's going to be your degree from Wisconsin, and what that means around the country and now around the world. And last night was full of people interested in China, and you've probably seen the exhibit downstairs. It's pretty phenomenal. This school and the contacts and relationships that you're making right now, it's invaluable.
I want to pick on something Benita said. You talked about giving back, and you mentioned charitable work or whatever. And then we've also been kind of circling around talking a little bit about leadership. I'd like to hear your thoughts about kind of the combination of those two. Giving back to the community, giving back in different ways, and how that factors into providing some leadership in your personal and professional lives.
I can kick it off. So when I got out of school, I moved to Omaha, Nebraska. And most people are going to prison when that happens. I actually was graduating from school. And you usually have to wear an ankle bracelet. There was nothing. I think I was kicked out. I think it was like you have to leave Madison for at least 2 years. So I grew up in Madison. But I went to Omaha, didn't know a soul. Didn't know a soul, didn't know what it looked like, first job out of college, and then moved to Minneapolis. And one of the best ways I found to meet people was getting involved and giving back. And it was a great way. I lived in Minneapolis, I lived in LA, I live in Chicago now, grew up in Madison, went to school in Madison. So I'm the kid that didn't go, I went 4 miles to school, right, to college. So I needed to go and try something different and giving back. I didn't have money, but I had time. I remember I was in cystic fibrosis. I started an event called the All Sports Ball. This was in 1994. So in those dollars, we raised $200,000, which in today's dollars would be like, I guess a lot more money with inflation. It was a big number back then, and it was a brand new event. And I remember the first board meeting I went at, and everybody looked like this panel, except I was 23, and we all had to introduce ourselves, and it was like the president of this company and the head of Goldman Sachs, and everybody went around. And it came to me, and I was like, I'm not the president of anything, and I'm 2 years out of school, but what I can do is I'll work my ass off for you, and I'll make sure that I organize everything. And that's what I could give. It was right to Alan's point. I couldn't give money. I was 23. But what I could do was give time, effort. They had families I didn't. And getting involved opened up networks, new networks of people. I didn't know anybody in the town. I called Minneapolis a second home to me. So, and I would say that got me through my kind of adolescence of adulthood. But I would be remiss if I didn't say, watching a guy over the years like Wade, who's given back to just so many causes, not only here, but what you may not see is what he does down at Northwestern and what he does down in Chicago and what he does in the athletic department and the academic side and how he handles his business. I think it's a good lesson for all of us. And so as I've grown up, I've kind of taken, I was time and effort, now I'm married and have a family, I have less time. But I've changed how I try to help out with initiatives. And so I think charitable work is a great way to build and reveal character of all of you, and also create opportunities that you didn't even know exist by who you meet. And I would encourage you all to do it, no matter where you end up and no matter what you end up doing.
I think everybody will probably talk a lot about what they do as far as the not-for-profit boards and everything else, how they're involved with organizations. I think a lot of times what we don't talk about when we talk about giving back is, I heard a great quote from a mentor, and this is going back a number of years, but the quote was something, and I'll paraphrase it, was something along the lines of, if somebody's in need, don't send them flowers, bring them flowers. And I think it's so key that when you start to think about building relationships, the key to your leadership, whatever that road is going to go down, whether that be to be in business, to be a teacher, whatever that is, the success is going to be measured on the amount of fans that you can build and who's going to want to see you succeed. And so I think if you keep that in mind and you talk about the relationships that you build here and what you do for those individual relationships, that's as important as what you can do to give back to those organizations with your time, your efforts, and your money. So I think it's important.
And just to follow up what they both said, when you're younger, I think you walk out of college or whatever at that point thinking, what can I do for a nonprofit? I can't write a big check. I can barely feed myself at the end of the day. But you have time. You have more time, believe me, it's hard to believe, but you have more time now than you will 10 years from now when you have a family or children or a booming career or whatever else. And that time is really important. And you can use that in ways, not only is it satisfying from the perspective of giving back and helping individuals, but they're great opportunities to learn leadership. When I was soon out of law school, I was on the diversity committee for the state bar, and I was in leadership positions that no one would have given me at that time in a corporation. But it was a great way to learn how to run a board or how to get a committee together and get them to take action and to take, to meet new people. I was sitting on committees at the Women's Fund in Milwaukee where I met individuals from Northwestern Mutual and met individuals from there that I wouldn't have otherwise met in my career at that point. But I was sitting on a committee with them and you made connections. So obviously there's the great benefit and the great just feeling good about doing something great for the society, but it also helps you learn skills that you can bring back to your own career and help you develop yourself. At this point I'm on a board for a nonprofit organization in Milwaukee that helps young teen girls. And one of the great connections that have come up is the number of people that are on that board that somehow connect back either through investments that they're making with our firm or that they're considering or they're moving in a similar direction in their own business. You can make those connections in multiple ways and still feel like, in the best part of my days most of the time is when I'm doing something with that nonprofit organization because I can see the real difference that I'm making in an individual person's life. So there's lots of lessons to be learned from those opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, tough to back that up. They hit on a lot of things. I would say, in general, badgers are difference makers, and that's important. And I think as you go along and meet, different people from different generations of graduates, you notice that. You want to be a part of that, and you want to pay it forward. And those are all really positive attributes. Another thing, I think it's important to get involved with organizations that you're passionate about. I think people will see through if you're not genuinely passionate about a philanthropic cause or whatnot. People will see through that. And then finally, I'd say, is the quality and the ilk of the people you meet in these organizations usually are top shelf. And that's very important because when you go and meet those type of people, those are the type of relationships you want to develop. And usually, great causes attract great people.
I want to pick up on something that Matt talked about. You had time to give an organization. What advice do you have for people when they're coming out of college and they're starting off in careers and they need to convince an employer, yeah, I'm the one, and forget what's on the paper and all the rest of that, but in an interview or something like that, how can you promote the fact that you have integrity, that you have some ethics or things like that? How do you get that across? This is one of the questions we had for our participants.
Ooh, that's a tough question right there.
That's why I didn't answer it. I let you.
I'll take a stab at it. I think that you're not going to be able to put anything on the surface or spit shine something and say, hey, I'm an ethical person, you should hire me. That just comes through time. And I think, that's going to be, what is your follow-up? If you say you're going to do something, are you going to do it? If you're the person that they know that they're in a pinch and they can rely upon, again, I go back to a point I made a little bit earlier. I think to have success is other people want to see you succeed. And I think that's kind of the key. And so the only way that you can do that is to follow through on the commitments you make. So I don't think there's any silver bullet here. I don't think you can, can't come out of Notre Dame and people think you're ethical.
I knew you.
But, so I don't think there's a silver bullet. And I think that's just going to come from time and following through.
So if you can't show that, though, let me just follow up real quick. What do you show?
I think it goes back. I think you have to be your individual person, and I think you have to follow through on what commitments you make. And so if you look them in the eyeballs and say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out the answer to that, then you come back and you follow up with that answer. And I think you have to do that in a timely fashion. I think that it's something that you're going to have to evolve, and people will trust you. And as a result, I think that's when careers do begin to boom, is when they know that's something they can rely on. They know they're going to follow through on their commitments and their promises. And that's when you build clients and you build fans in your office.
I would say, to second Scott's point, I think follow-up is huge. I think people, when you don't follow up after speaking to somebody, if you're approaching them professionally, that's a real strike against you. I think it's an underrated quality. A lot of people just forget about a lot of times, so follow-up's huge. There's no question about that. And then I think also references a lot of times come into play. So if you're trying to reach out to somebody, I think, people are going to do due diligence, and whether it's a certain network or whatnot, they can go into people and find out, and it's a pretty efficient market in that respect. And then finally, working at a big global Wall Street firm is we have a lot of training. A lot of it's online, a lot of it's in different ways in terms of ethics and conduct. And you work for a 150-year-old Swiss bank like I do, it's the most important thing is the reputation. That's been built up for so many years, and a couple stupid things that one or two individuals do potentially can bring that all down. So it's very important, and when you approach people and you speak to them, you really have to come through and chest puffed out and look them in the eye, like Scott said, and come through in an ethical fashion. Very important.
I think it's very hard to convince someone that you're ethical. You have to be ethical. So being that the compliance and the culture of compliance is a really big part of what we do, I actually interview every candidate that we are considering for hire. And part of that reason for that interview is really just to get a sense of who you are and trying to get that feel. But you can get that feel if the person really is ethical and believes in it, and is actually, you can't tell me that you're ethical, you got to show me that you're ethical, and that you believe in yourself and that you're doing this because that's who you are, not who you're trying to be. So I don't think it's something you can demonstrate for somebody. It's something that you show through your actions, through the way you talk, through what you're saying, through how you're answering questions, through the questions you're asking. If talking just was really about that interview process, but then once you're there, it's like these guys are saying, it's follow-up, it's being thorough, it's being responsive. Again, as a younger person in a company, your biggest attribute again is time, and being able to get quick responses and following up and not letting things fall through. That's how you're going to be seen as a really key player.
I think it's a great point. When I went to work for a firm, Bernstein, out of New York a number of years ago, and one of the things that they did, and many of you may go through this, if you decide to go into, regardless of what industry, but certainly in finance, they fly you out, and this was only 10 years ago. They fly you out and they put you through about 15 interviews in a day. So 15 different people are basically asking you the same question over and over again. Because they don't know you, right? And then they all meet to see if they have the same opinion of you. And sometimes you may wonder, why am I meeting all these people for Procter & Gamble or whoever it is? Ethics, and do I like this person? Are they a good fit? They're trying to, everybody can answer it the right way once. But do you believe it? Do you live it? And I think, I think the learning lesson there is, when you're going in and you're meeting potential employers or you're meeting people, it's not the amount you say, it's what you say. Say it with a purpose. Understand your audience. Understand that the nonverbal things that you do I'd like to be able to say, you can trust me, right? My kindergarten teacher may come over and slap me for compliance. Like, I can't say that in the finance. We're the most regulated business, I think, other than physicians. But it's how you say it as much as what you say and the amount you say. So when you're in that interview and you're talking to them, are you looking at them, clearly communicating to them what you've done, what you want to do? Are you closing them for that order of the next interview, or I want the job? And do they come out of there and go, boy, that lady is sharp. She gets it. Doesn't matter what's on your resume in the sense of you're all going to be good, but she understands who she is, where she wants to go. She doesn't know exactly what she wants to be, but she's got a firm, I'm going to take a risk on that person. And it comes down to ethics, to your point, but it's more in the tone of, do I trust that person? And I think, once again, it's not necessarily how much you say, it's what you say. How do you handle yourself in an interview? How are you dressed? Do you make eye contact? I'm making eye contact with you. When you're in that interview, what are you saying to them? What are the questions you're asking? And then how are you ending it? And you'll get a feel, but I think it's really important and almost a lost art sometimes.
Let me change gears and ask some questions about the industry as a whole. First question. At the moment, we have a room full of people who are going to be graduating here sometime, hopefully, year 2 or 3. Financial services industry, good opportunity or wait a little bit?
Well,
I
I can't wait. I think it's a phenomenal industry. Just look at this panel. There's not a one of them that you wouldn't enjoy working with. And I think that's very typical of the business. I mean, it's guys and gals, the mixture is fabulous. The excitement of what's going on in this world today. When I was in your position and knocking on doors to get a job, the industry was pretty small. It was much different than today. Today it's so global. I think the excitement and the potential and the type of people you're going to be able to work with, second to none. And it opens doors. You've got to work hard. I think you have to work harder today than in my day. And in my day, they said, Wade, we have no clients in Iowa. This is true. Wade, we have no clients in Iowa. Go out to Iowa. There's nothing you can mess up. And so I went to Iowa and knocked on doors. I literally would pick up the yellow pages and go through and say, yeah, I think I've heard of that company. It's called Maytag in Newton, Iowa. Made a cold call on Maytag in Newton. But today you don't do that. Today it's much more internet driven. It's changed. And you all know how to use those tools. I barely do. But today it's so global, it's exciting. If you work hard, you're going to be with really nice people and people that are smarter than you. So you're going to learn from them. I think it's a fabulous area.
I think the international opportunities, the global opportunities are just absolutely amazing in the industry, not only from an investment perspective as far as trying to find gems to invest in across the globe, but also just an industry of the existence of a mutual fund or a investment vehicle like that didn't exist in China or India or even much of the European nations 20 years ago. And so this is an exciting time to be able to be not just important in part of the financial industry in the U.S., but around the world. And Ellen, you can probably speak better to that than I can, but it's exciting because it's more than just your state or your country, it's around the world.
Yeah, I'd follow that up and I'd say, as much as Wade's seen a lot more of the cycles, right now Wall Street's somewhat of a contrarian play. It's coming out of 08 and whatnot, there's still a lot of negative press, if you will, about Wall Street. But I think you have to look at things in terms of the bigger picture and longer cycles. That's important. I think when you're younger, everything's more magnified and the cycles are so much shorter. So I do think that there's a tremendous opportunity. I think we're very much in the instant gratification, get rich quick era with not so much .coms, that was late 90s, but now this new internet craze with social media and whatnot. So I do think that it's a tremendous opportunity. I agree with Wade that it is harder now, and what everybody has to realize is ultimately you have to sacrifice at some point to become successful. And I sat down with a business owner yesterday, and the difference between him at age 40 running a $500 million company versus other people that were in the same seat as him 15, 20 years ago is he made sacrifices in his 20s. He did things that maybe other people didn't want to do, but let's face it, to be successful, that's ultimately what it takes. You have to make calculated sacrifices at times to get ahead of the competition. So I would say it's a tremendous opportunity, but to add to Wade's point, you're going to have to work a little bit harder than maybe in the past.
I never thought I'd say this, but I'll say it. It is absolutely going to be a marathon and not a sprint. And that's a tough one, if I sound like my dad saying that. But that's a tough one to say, because to Alan's point, I think we're in a world of instant gratification. And I think you guys have what you believe potentially your career path is going to be. And some of this is just going to take time. And I think some of that is you're going to have to take calculated risk when the risk is there, and then stand by those decisions. But I do think it's going to be some time. And so it was interesting. I had a cousin actually that was in the process of just graduated from Wisconsin, and he was moving down a couple years ago to Chicago. And I told him, I said, it's 4 years. You can't do anything for 4 years. I gave him that window, and right now I think he's going on year 3. He's ready to pull his hair out because he wants that next promotion, that next thing, that next shiny object. And I do think that you've got to put some time in. You've got to learn the business, whatever business that's going to be, become technically proficient, and then when the opportunity presents itself to take a calculated risk, that's when you take that risk.
Just to add on what the panels already illustrated, I would say a couple things when I look at people getting into the business and the people that have made it in the business and they're down in their career. And if I look at finances, or the financial services industry specifically, we don't get out of the gate as quick as going to work for some of the other industries you could go into. So if you look at that 22 to 28-year-old, typically, we're going to be, to the marathon sprint, we're going to start out a little bit slower. It's a learning process. People are trusting you with your money. It takes longer to get experience, and experience matters when you're trying to call on your parents for their retirement. As good as you all are, you can't, sometimes people want wrinkles, and unfortunately I'd like more hair, but less hair, right? That said, if I go down the road 10 years or 15 years, and I look at that same group of people, and I say, okay, now everybody's at the top of their game. So we started out of college, we started slow, and then I look at many of the people represented right here on this table, and I look at their peers in those other industries and this industry, and there's no better. And I don't see that changing. I mean, it's not even close. But you have to have a vision long term, and it's not right for everybody, but I would just say, and the other thing is, I'll leave you with this, on this thought. Is it an exciting business? Is it an exciting industry? And the industry is not just what he does or she does or I do. It's massive amounts of different places to go. But how many TV channels do we have dedicated to it? How many newspapers talk about it? By the way, is the business going away? Is everybody going direct? Because I believe there's more ways to get information about our industry than there ever has been before. This business is only going to get better, and it's getting, what the most exciting, and I think you illustrated it earlier, and it's getting global. It's a really exciting place to be.
I would add, just 1 second, something that's changed dramatically, how many of you have either done it or are planning to study abroad? Interesting. Now, let me ask you the question. How many of you are thinking of going to China to study abroad? 2 hands, maybe 3. Go to China. We're all talking about taking a risk. I know, it's a long way. It's a different language. Everything's different. But believe me, if you want to get ahead and have an impact on somebody you're interviewing with down the road, and they look on your resume that you've been to China, or you can speak Mandarin, or you've taken courses in China, they're going to notice that.
See how it's changed? Omaha, China. So different.
Des Moines.
Des Moines, Iowa, no clients. Omaha, knew nobody. Beijing.
All right, I got a couple more questions to fill up, and these are going to be kind of the short answer versions on them. What one non-classroom thing do you think everyone in this room should make sure they learn before they graduate? So we spent a lot of time in class and work and whatever else. What non-classroom thing?
I guess it's kind of a classroom, but along the lines of a CFP. I think that there's so much financial literacy out there that if you can take the time to organize your financial life, whether it's, you know, some kind of program on a computer, or even getting, you know, to the extent of getting a CFP, I think it's huge. I think it's so important. It's like a fundamental, basic thing that if you can grasp how to handle money, which is freedom a lot of times, that makes life a lot more simple, and you can get into those habits now as opposed to waiting to down the road.
You know, we talked about a lot about risk-taking, I think the last couple minutes, and I will tell you this, I think the most important thing you can do is learn how to fall. And I think because you will fall, you will fail, how do you get up from that, and how do you move yourself forward? If you don't learn that, you will struggle in whatever career you choose to do.
I'd say get a second major and have that major in economics or business and finance. I think it's going to be really important that you've got the basic fundamentals when you get out into the marketplace, regardless of what field you're going to go into. But I think if you can show how hard you work because you got a double major, I think that would be real important. I didn't get close to a double major.
Last question. You each get one line, and it's your opportunity for immortality. So if you could have one thing written on every single classroom wall on this campus, of which there are 1,412. I just made that up. But it's close, I'm sure. What would it be? One sentence answer, or a phrase. Wait.
On Wisconsin.
Okay, I should have. Yeah.
I'm not following that one up.
How about be where you are?
Okay, he gets to elaborate.
I think that would relate to, there's so many distractions that wherever you are, if you can have the capacity to focus on the task at hand or what you're trying to accomplish is a huge quality that will help you be successful.
I think if you believe in yourself, because if you don't, others won't.
Okay.
I would say, don't be afraid to believe in the unknown. That would be Notre Dame after last year.
Notre Dame had to get into this.
I am a Badger, guys, come on. Mine's pretty easy. I think it would just be simple, it just would say, be present. And I think a lot of that has to do with what Alan's saying. And I think that's being present while you're in the classroom, being present, you know, when you're in a business interview, being present with your friends, being present with your girlfriends, with your moms and dads. You'll be better for it.
Very good. Well, I'd like to respect everyone's time, but most I'd like to thank our panelists on behalf of the School of Human Ecology, Dean Shim and Personal Finance Program.